today. It's going to be an exciting day, but the first game that we're going to talk about, of course, is Jambre versus Greensheep. Now, both previous winners of the Premiership. Jambre was Season 2 winner, and Greensheep was Season 3 winner. So, battle of the winners, the W's this week.
That's right. And they're similar not only in the fact that they are both previous winners of the ESL series, they had pretty similar strategies last week, with them both playing fairly aggressive decks and neither of them having particularly high amounts of success with it. But here we can see two lineups which could be fairly aggressive once again, but could once again, or could be changing things up and going for a more mid-range or controlling style. We see the Warrior, which I'm assuming probably going to be Pirate Warrior, but we did see in the previous week George C bringing a Fatigue Warrior. We also saw, I believe there was a N'Zoth control kind of Fatigue Warrior as well being played there. And then for Greensheep, most likely to be the Tempo Secret Mage that we've seen a lot of recently, and as well in other tournaments it's been represented quite heavily. But it could also be the Frostlich Jaina Control Mage. So from both players, I have anything to be expected.
All to play for as well, of course, but you're completely right. Last week they both brought these aggressive decks and they were punished for it. Perhaps they were a little bit too predictable, as it were. Their opponents maybe expected those aggressive decks and they teched accordingly, but instantly we can see that Greensheep actually going for the Murloc Paladin here in comparison to Jambre with his Druid. Now, I wouldn't say Druid is a particularly aggressive deck, but it is, of course, a very successful one. But speaking of aggro, there's a beautiful turn 1 and 2 there for Greensheep. Yeah,
it was looking a little bit rough when he had only the Tidecaller to get his early game going, followed up very late on down the line by Finger and Curator. But Rockpool Hunter obviously helps smooth things out, but the single card there from Jambre in Doomsayer will do a fantastic job of just clearing up this board and giving him the opportunity to just take it a little bit slower, play out his own Jade cards like the Jade Spirit we see there, and any other ramp he finds along the way.
Yeah, wrong crab, unfortunately. I hate when that happens. I hate crabs in general, to be honest.
Not a fan of the crab.
No, I'm really not. But regardless, they are here to stay currently, and they have been very prominent in recent weeks. Or recent months, I should say, of Hearthstone. But you're completely right. Doomsayer is a possibility here, but he's not gone for it. He just wants to kill off this Tidecaller. Doesn't want to allow the chance of this Tidecaller being buffed up even further and then killing off the Doomsayer. Yeah,
I think kind of strange lines of play, not necessarily bad, but interesting from Jambre, that on turn 1, when he coined out the crab, he was saying, I don't think he's got the Rockpool Hunter. It's just too much of a high roll. I'm going to pray he doesn't have it. But by not playing out the Doomsayer there, he's now saying, okay, if he has the Murloc War Leader, that's too devastating of a scenario. I can't allow him to kill my Doomsayer while still developing stuff. So assuming that it's more likely for there to be a worst case scenario in that aspect, even though there's already been 2 fantastic cards on curve. So I think might have preferred to see the Doomsayer there, but like you say, just killing off the Tidecaller before it can grow out of hand is a very reasonable line of play.
Yeah, the coin into Doomsayer was something I definitely was considering when I saw his hand, but now he's forced to play the Doomsayer, and of course there is an answer from Greensheep as well, thanks to the Rallying Blade. And then it gets a little bit sticky for Jambre because of that. In following turns, he does have the Jade Spirit, which starts contesting the board, so I'm okay with playing Jade Spirit now on 4.
Yeah, it's really quite unfortunate for Jambre this, because going for the Doomsayer would have survived on turn 1. With the Rallying Blade, might not have survived on turn 2, but it's so far falling behind on tempo now, and his tempo regaining cards like Swipe are looking like they're not going to be doing quite good enough of a job here. So the name of the game is really just survival until Primordial Drake, but with the pickup of 2 Scalebanes here, maybe that's just not even going to be enough.
Yeah, the Scalebane is such a devastating card, and I love its inclusion as of late as well. It was another card that sort of went unnoticed with the recent meta, or the recent expansion, should I say, and then suddenly it's come to prominence and everyone's using it in a lot of these tempo variantated? That's not even a word, is it? Is that a word? It is now.
Orientated?
No, oriented.
Oriented.
Yeah. Some people say orientated. And
those people would be idiots, wouldn't they?
They
hate
would.
Those guys.
They're the worst kinds. But yeah, the Scalebane has definitely been good to help regain the tempo for certain plays. And now it's a bit sticky for Jambre because you do have the option of maybe swiping, hero powering. You want to be able to check for the secret first, which is what he's doing here.
Yeah, if it is the noble sacrifice, you obviously really don't want to attack him with the Jade Golem, because that's a little bit too much investment you've put into just dealing with your opponent's 1-mana secret. Not going with the swipe here makes sense, because it's likely to be a little bit better later on down the line, and it doesn't actually even kill anything here. It would only weaken it up for a Primordial Drake, which is 2 turns away anyway. So yeah, so I like saving it for this turn, maybe doing it next turn, as I said, to weaken these minions up for the Drake.
This board's gone from pretty ugly to absolutely
Dan Gaskin.
your neighbour's ugly sister, kind of. Not your neighbour in particular, because I'm sure she's lovely, if you have a neighbour and she has a sister, but maybe my neighbour I'm talking about.
Bit of a stinker.
Yeah. Not a stinker for a tinker? No? Can we go down there again or not?
No.
I don't think that's going to go.
The door is closed.
The door is well and truly closed, locked. We've thrown away the key. And Jambre might be thinking about, well, closing this door as well on this game, because actually this is looking... yeah. What do? You swipe. You can take out one of the 5/2s.
Yeah, in combination with the hero power, it's just, it's so annoying, because the swipe here, all the residual damage does basically nothing, because you are just gearing up for the Primordial Drake on the following turn, so it feels like such a wasted turn. But outside of that, what can you really do? If you go with the Jade Spirit, your opponent can just ignore it. They're pushing through 19 damage. You're so close to dead already. Something like a Blessing of Kings or a True Silver Champion basically pushes you to an unwinnable position. And even if that's not there, you're under so much pressure. But for Jambre, what else can you do? If you're face tanking the 5 from the Scalebane when you attack into it anyway, it's the same amount of damage you're taking.
Yeah, and he's kind of just hoping here that you've got Primordial Drake as the follow-up that can maybe try and stabilize, clear off this 5-1 next turn, he hopes. But is it going to be enough is the real question, because Greensheep is just continuously pushing damage here. Megasaur as well in hand now should be curtains realistically. But I suppose we are going to see the Murloc die, so the Megasaur won't be in use just yet. But the fact he's got Finger and he can follow up with a Megasaur after Finger summons something.
There's still a lot of juice going on in Greensheep's hand. Interesting as well to point out that he is running the UK Paladin, as I believe it's been dubbed, which was Jambre's home brew. That's got to sting.
Yeah, it's even worse, isn't it, when it's something you made yourself. But ball control would have been used with that. When he made that Tempo Warrior that everyone used after a while. But the UK Paladin had has Dread Corsairs in it, doesn't it?
Yes.
It did. I don't know if it's...
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Which is, I think, the main characteristic, and obviously patches as well.
It says that,
because the Dread Corsair has so much synergy with the potential 4 weapons you can run in the Paladin with 2 Rallying Blades and 2 True Silver Champions. But as you said, the Megasaur not getting too much use here, but it is set up a board which, even if some of the stuff is dealt with in the Scalebane and the Grimscale Chum, the Megasaur comes back in and reapplies so much pressure to the board, hopefully just delivering lethal to your opponent before turn 10 comes down. Because as ever, when an Ultimate Infestation is in hand for the Druid, it's always just slowly counting up to the potential of an Ultimate Infestation, clawing back the game from the jaws of defeat.
Right, so... nothing. No, I will confirm this in a little bit, but yeah, interesting game this one, but it is over. We will get some clarity. I believe that the names were actually the wrong way around, and I think Jambre might have won that game.
That would make more sense. He did make that deck.
Can I get some confirmation just that Jambre won that game, and that would be marvellous, and then we can all get on with our lives. So yes, okay, so Jambre won that game. It was his Paladin. It wasn't Greensheep using the deck that he made. And we apologise for all of the confusion that you would have had at home, equally as confused as us casting that game backwards.
Kind of wouldn't seem possible to be as confused as these two boys right here. But
some people do call me the backwards man.
Why is that?
Backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk as back as fast as you can.
I can walk pretty fast.
Can you?
To be fair.
Okay. Do you know what that's from? You probably don't, do you?
No.
Never mind. You're too young. That's
another thing.
Another one. I've never wanted to ever say that on a broadcast, and I just did, and I feel sick because I did.
You played yourself.
I'm going to vomit everywhere in a minute, and it's all your fault. And there was even a sound effect. I actually hate production a little bit as well now. Can I have some water? Unbranded, preferably. Yeah, thank you very much.
There you go, my friend.
There we go. We didn't see anything like that. Okay, so yeah, game 1 went in favour of Le Jambre rather than Greensheep, and now we have the names correct. We are sorry about that, genuine mistake. I'm apologising like it's my fault, but, you know, I'll take the blame.
I like that more as well. It's good when players have kind of signature decks they're bringing to a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, it's not like we haven't seen other players use other UK decks, if you know what I mean. But I'm really impressed that Jambre was able to get that victory. It's an early start for him. Now he can push on. But now Greensheep has the whole, I'm 1-0 behind. I've got to try and work with this Druid deck. And usually Druid is a pretty solid deck to actually play with. Something that you're very comfortable with and you think should be able to pick up wins. But it can fall to aggressive decks very easily.
It can. It's had a real wobble recently with how it deals with aggro, because in the Ungoro days you ran Earthen Scales, Feral Rage, Primordial Drake, a lot of great anti-aggro tools. But then when the Knights of the Frozen Throne came about, they all fell to the wayside because Spreading Plague was just so good. It could completely destroy aggro in its own right. But now that that's been nerfed, it's become a little bit harder once again. But in this instance, it's looking pretty good for the Druid with an incredibly poor hand from Le Jambre.
Not just that as well, the Galactic Crawler is going to make a big difference.
Oh, yes.
I remember about 20 minutes ago when I was playing the game as a pirate something, and a Galactic Crawler came down, and I conceded very quickly in a very angry rage.
You wouldn't think iPads would explode into that many pieces, would you?
You wouldn't. Thankfully, I have insurance, so we'll be okay. As now Greensheep is going to chow down on this naughty pirate lady. She's going to get gobbled up. You ready for it?
No.
No? Okay.
It's not quite as good as the slightly bigger pirate lady in the Naga Corsair.
Is that a lady? Yeah, it sounds like a lady. I always thought it was a man. Well, there we are. Every day's a school day, isn't it, Darrell?
You learn something new every day, you do.
But yeah, this is looking good for Greensheep. He's got Answers, he's got Doomsayers, he's got Crabs, he's got everything. He's
just got all the anti-aggro tools he could possibly want. Double Doomsayer, as you said, right out the gate, leading into Malfurion in the Pestilent, another way to really shut down these aggro decks, because even as you get into the late... Obviously, sorry, the Scarabs are really good, but as you go into the later stages of the game, almost as good as old-school Justicar Trueheart Warrior hero power in gaining 3 armor every turn. Just shuts down any surprise lethal opportunities from the Warrior. And, I mean, you're in such a good situation here. You can just afford to go for Nourish for ramp. Yeah, I think you do Nourish here. And you look for one, and you can play Malfurion as well, and that's another tool to just gain armor and get out of range of the Pirate Warrior. Instantly, Jambre's already had to use his Arcanite Reaper to trade, which always feels a bit bad. You want to push that 5 damage to face. But I've seen these positions where Pirate Warriors do get into a tricky little place like this, and they still manage to win a game. But the fact that Malfurion's there makes me worry a little bit for Jambre. I mean, when the Warriors are in this kind of a situation when they absolutely haven't won early game board control, which is your primary win condition, they have to fall back on Arcanite Reaper and upgrading it as many times as possible. And there is the opportunity for Jambre to do that with another Blood Cell Cultist, as well as the upgrade that was just played. He can push a pretty respectable amount of damage here. But as you just said, the Malfurion, the Pestilent, is probably going to put a stop to that with both the Scarabs and the armor up every single turn. I didn't know what you were going to say there. You were like, he can push a and I was like, formidable, frilly amount of damage. And this is the question when he traded and he took out the Galactic Crawler. I was thinking, should he have gone face? But I guess he wanted to somehow keep a little bit of board control. The Doomsayer allowed him to make the play of, I'm just going to start hitting face. Yeah. But already these taunts are a nuisance. He needs to start clearing and hoping he can push a lot of damage. But it's one of those games as a Pirate Warrior where it becomes very frustrating very quickly as taunt after taunt can come down from some of these decks. I mean, this is a position where you could argue that, you could have argued on the previous turn, where Jambre had just given up board control. He left the Doomsayer up. He's saying, okay, you can develop as much as you want. I'm just going all out with the damage. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he's taking a really good middle ground where you leave the Doomsayer, let it go off while getting the damage into face, knowing that on the next turn, because the Jades are still very small from the Druid, there's not going to be that much of a push onto the board, so that you can then follow up, as we see here, with a nice suite of Pirates to close things out. But I say close things out, it's still a very respectable health total from Greensheep, and there is really no signs of getting that down to 0 or gaining back the board. I mean, we say that, but 7 damage can go to face now, just from the Arcanite Reaper. And of course, I don't know, I think that Jambre is in a better position than I thought he was going to be. The swing of being able to play the deckhand as well as the Cultist has worked out rather favourably.
It's going to depend on what Greensheep draws from this Nourish, if he's going to use the Nourish to draw, to be honest. Something like a Primordial Drake would be big for him.
Yeah.
Even a Swipe, just to deal with some of this this board presence.
I mean, the fact that he's got the coin here is way more relevant than it would usually be on turn 10 because of the fact that it opens up all the 6-drops after Nourish. He can go Nourish into Jade Behemoth or into Spreading Plague if he gets it off the top. Alternatively, you can play your good friend Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, Ultimate Infestation into Coin, into Jade Idol, perhaps, if he does.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, if he draws one. That's something that Druid is definitely lost in Innovate disappearing as well. You don't have that Ultimate Infestation into Innovate into something else like a Wrath, which was always very detrimental. But it's too good not to play the Ultimate Infestation. And of course, the Hydra is going to be the prime target. Not only are you dealing damage to your opponent, but you don't want 8 damage coming towards your face.
Yeah, and the main, I say the main thing, it did just summon a 5/5 and gain 5 armor and all that nonsense. But it opens up your options next turn so drastically. Here we can see there's so many options already. As you said, Primordial Drake hero power, Jade Behemoth swipe, Fandral into Nourish and draw a million cards if you need that. Like, there's so many options you have. And even though this is all of a sudden 20 damage coming through, I still think you're okay.
Unfortunately, it's not 20 damage to face, though. Jambre deciding he wants to keep board control here. Primordial Drake doesn't deal with these 4/3s, though.
Yep, that's true.
So another Arcanite Reaper off the top would be nice for Jambre, but this is still looking pretty tricky.
Yeah, I mean, he needs some of the top end of his deck, be it another Bittertide Hydra, as you said, an Arcanite Reaper. The other interesting cards, Keleseth, if it's in the deck even, is probably a bit too late. Yeah, it's just got to be big stuff because already the board has basically gone.
Yeah, the board's lost, and I think the game's lost as well now. Greensheep has all of the tools thanks to the Ultimate Infestation. Drawing those cards is so important. Excuse me. And now he ties it up 1-1, so Jambre's aggression doesn't pile through the Druid this time. And Greensheep will be very happy to get a win, an actual win, on the board this time, rather than a false reverse.
The real stuff.
Yeah.
The good stuff.
Sometimes you like a little bit of a real win. Have you ever had a win that wasn't really a win?
No, it's always been like a gold star from my mum.
Oh, does she still do that? Did you put them on the fridge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good cast, Derek.
Oh, did your mum watch cast?
She does.
My mum watches my cast as well. Hi, mums.
Hi, Mum.
Thanks for supporting us. Now Twitch chat are going to say really nasty things about us, and you're going to have to read them.
Yeah.
But yes, anyway, these are the decks that are left. Jambre has Druid and Warrior. Of course, the Pirate Warrior we've just seen. Greensheep has Priest and Mage left. Last week, of course, we mentioned earlier that it was a Tempo Mage variant. We were discussing how well Tempo Mage has been performing as of late, not just in tournament settings, but on ladder as well. Do we think maybe it could be something different? Who knows? I just like the fact that it's not an instant Priest ban from Jambre. He's clearly got a game plan of what he wants to work against here, and he feels like Shaman is too much of a presence, has too much removal for him to compete against. Yeah,
clearly, once again, indicating Jambre's aggressive playstyle in that we already saw the Pirate Warrior and the Murloc Paladin, so getting rid of the Shaman makes sense. And if Greensheep has correctly predicted it, I really wouldn't hate a really anti-aggro, removal-heavy control mage with something like Frostlich Jaina, double polymorph, all that good stuff to really lock down the early game and bring you to your unlimited amount of water elementals. But for this particular matchup in the Kazakhs Priest up against the Jade Druid, it's obviously not a particularly favourable matchup for the Priest. You really do have to hit your Raz of the Chained into the Anduin as quickly as you possibly can. And although he has neither of those cards right out of the gate, the Novice Engineer is a good way to get things going.
It is, and I was never a fan of Novice Engineer being in this deck when I first looked at it, because I was like, why? But then, in combination, of course, with Shadow Reaper Anduin a little bit later, it's a low mana costing card that you can play, get another card, and then fire a ridiculous amount of damage towards your opponent's face. Do you know why it's called Highlander Priest?
I've got to be honest.
You're too young again.
I don't. I know it's like a thing, like there can be only one.
Yeah, it's a film. It's a film.
Right.
There can only be one.
What's that?
Highlander.
Film.
It's these things that we watch on television, or now iPads.
The big iPad?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Falcone didn't know what Highlander was either. Shout out to Big Falc.
The big F.
The big F.
Spread your wings.
TBF. To be frank. Or to be Falc. There we are. You invented
coming to
an iPad
cinema, a big iPad near you.
So Greensheep has the amazing hand of already playing Kazakhs and has Raza available as well. I mean, some people would say this is already game over. Would you agree with that, Darrell?
I would not.
Okay,
Of the two combo, the most important cards in Raza and Anduin. The Anduin is the more important one in this matchup, I would say. The Raza, I suppose, is good because you really don't want to be falling behind in the mid game, and it allows you to obviously activate your full hero power later on down the line. And because we've got actually the curving out perfectly on 2, 3, and 4, there is the opportunity to, instead of going for drawing cards here on the Kazakhs potion, you go for plus health, maybe summon a 5/5 demon and lock down the early board instead of draw. But I think if the option was presented, you still want to go for the draw, just because drawing 2, getting you that little bit closer to Anduin, is just too valuable.
Yeah, Anduin is just a disgusting card. Not only in this matchup, but in general. I like saving him for when Jades do get a little bit big. What is your experience with this matchup then? Because I, for one, have found I'm favourable when I'm playing with the Priest. But I know a lot of people who feel like this is a Jade-heavy game.
I think the consensus is that it's still slightly favourable for the Druid. That is, however, when your opponent doesn't draw what I can call nothing other than the nuts. This is disgusting. This game is so likely to go to Greensheep because, I mean, the main way you're winning this game as the Druid anyway is by curving out perfectly with the Jades. Even though we see a very cool tech in here of the Living Mana, maybe with a N'Zoth in there as well. I've seen some weird lists of. It was actually a couple months ago now that I saw that. But it's been floating around for a more aggressive playstyle where you go really wide on the board, probably running Power of the Wild as well, now that Mark of the Lotus is bordering on core in the Jade Druid. But it is just going to be cleared up by the Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It's like when you send your kids off to school and then they
get
back.
set on fire.
They come back all muddy and you have to wash their clothes and you're like, oh, all my mana's back.
Yeah, your muddy pop.
Get your Purcell out. Is it Purcell?
Other child washing liquids are available.
They definitely are. Nourish available for Jambre, but I mean, you're completely right, Darrell. The fact that Greensheep has drawn all the big cards. So we say big cards, I mean, Ultimate Infestation, both of them are there for Le Jambre.
But in terms of what it's actually doing on the board, it's really not that high. The 5 damage, while here, it could be pretty good to kill off the Raza. Greensheep doesn't care. It's not about board control this matchup. It's about slamming that that Shadow Reaper Anduin down as quickly as you can. Even to respond to you saying you like to save it until the Jades are a bit bigger. I disagree. I
think in this game you don't need to.
Fair enough.
But you don't always draw Shadow Reaper in the first top 10 cards, right?
If you get it a little bit later down the line, fair enough.
It's okay to save it for your opponent. You hope they commit. Sometimes they won't. They would play around it appropriately.
Yep.
Jamboree does have the chance of burning. He's going to burn cards.
He is going to burn cards.
Yeah.
But
is there anything he is scared of burning, though, realistically?
Aya as just like the highest impact card. Jade Idol probably doesn't matter all too much because I think you're often just going to be throwing down both of them for tempo here. But yeah, here obviously you throw down the Shadow Reaper Anduin. You even have Prophet Velen just as icing on this big delicious cake to kill off your opponent even quicker.
Yeah, this is like a 3-tier cake. It's like a wedding cake.
It's like big Black Forest Gâteau.
Oh, what was that, a Jade Blossom he just discarded there? Either way, it wasn't an Aya, but I think we're at the point now where it doesn't really matter. There aren't a ton of little things for Greensheep to do to start going nuts with his hero power, but he does have, of course, Lyra. If he starts drawing some more spells, he can combine that with Life Steal?
Life Steal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a good thing to do, isn't it?
We love stealing life.
We do stealing, yeah. I like doing that.
Life Steal fans.
Yeah.
Love to see that.
Doesn't really need to, though, because he's got 35 health.
The most amount of life you can have.
Is it? No, it's not.
Well,
he's got
armor is not life. Honor, you can be Amara, the Warden of Hope.
True, you could be up to 40. Love is life. Shrek is life.
Wow, 2009 called. They want their memes back.
They can have them. I don't want them anymore.
Yeah, I don't want that meme either.
I don't even like fidget spinners anymore.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
My dad can beat up your dad. So Jambre's going to do what he can to try and resurface in this game, but he has been heavily drowned, and he is gasping for air. trying to escape the mucky waters that is Greensheep's Priest right now.
The web unravels.
So, Jambre's... Okay, so what I was expecting to see from Jambre was as big a development onto the board as he possibly can, because he will have correctly realised he's in a really bad spot here, so he needs to pray his opponent has nothing to be able to kill off his Jades in his suite of 9 cards in hand. It's an unlikely scenario, but I think you have to go for it. But here, just going with the Malfury and the Pestilent, I guess maybe he's saying he will expend his removal on the small cards I have here, but to be honest, I think the play was just to go as wide as you can on the board with Jades.
Blessed be this.
Yep. I mean, I agree, but I guess he's trying to combat the dominance of the Priest Death Knight with his own Death Knight, saying the hero power is going to help me win this game, if anything is going to help me win this game.
Right.
Fandral into Wrath will allow him to start drawing. He can, of course, combine the Jade Idols as well if he wants, so now he doesn't have to commit both of his Jade Idols to the board. Which we do see, or we have seen rather often from Druids lately, because they're worried, of course, of Skulking Geist. Right. But lately, Priests haven't been running Skulking Geist, have they? They've kind of given up. They're saying we can actually win against Druid without it. Yeah, I think it was one of the guys who runs Vicious Syndicate recently tweeted out to Kazakhs Priest players, stop being bad and running Skulking Geist in your deck. It just, I mean, this is how you win the matchup. It's not with Geist. Did it work? Did the Kazakhs Priest players, did they acknowledge? No. Not to be bad? They were too busy winning. Don't know how they do it. Winning seems like a thing I've always been searching for my whole life. Always been losing. A lot of spells in the hand now for the Greensheep. Which is exactly what you want. It is what you want. It combos. You start going off with Lyra at some point. Yeah, Velen, Lyra. As soon as you pick up Radiant Elemental, this is like super over. But until then, you know, you're still... Yeah, you can just go with this. He's taken the absolutely correct line of play of targeting all the hero powers to face. Way too often, I see Priest players trying to clear off everything they can because they're like, oh, what about the possible combination of these ridiculous tech cards that could be in a Druid? But there's really no need. In this instance, you just fire off everything you can to face, and you will win the game very soon. Yeah, I mean, you're in a situation where if you draw a Mind Blast, then you basically have already won the game. Prophet Velen plus Mind Blast plus 2 hero powers is absolutely filthy. Yeah, like, it makes me want to leave the Earth sometimes when I'm playing against it. Straight up. Straight up to heaven. Bye-bye. Not having it. Jesus, take the wheel. It's mind-blowing. And there was a lot of... I mean, when Kazakhs Priest, well, in this rendition, was popular, people weren't running Prophet Velen to start with. And then it got added, and people were like, really? Oh, and a Mind Blast? Why? And then you kind of witness the wombo combo that comes forth. And you still hear people asking in chat when people are playing Priest, like, why? The Mind Blast is so bad against aggro, to which the answer is yes, but it auto-wins pretty much every control matchup once you've completed your hero power, as we see here. Once the Mind Blast is picked up, that would be 28 damage. Even here, it would be something crazy with the Holy Smite. It's obviously not quite lethal because the 10 damage from the Mind Blast is really what makes the combo pop. But yeah, here, Greensheep drawing as many cards as he can, whilst, as we were saying, keeping back his Prophet Velen for that Mind Blast. I just don't see any way he loses. The old Spirit Lash lifesteal. The word I was looking for earlier. Spirit Lash. Spirit Lash. Oh, you were looking for the name of the card. No, I wasn't. I don't forget cards. Right, sorry, I did. Lorinda keeps calling it the card Spirit Link or something. He keeps getting that one wrong. It's the wrong game. I know. Legend of Zelda, isn't it? Spirit Link. Yeah. Oh, well, Link is. Yeah, there must be spirits involved. Speaking of spirits, Jambre will be praying to the gods that this doesn't happen again, because that was painful to endure for him, I'm sure. It's always ugly when you're up against a priest, especially a priest that runs one of everything, and they seem to have everything. Every answer, every turn, first 10 cards, Kazakhs, Raza, Anduin. Yeah, I mean, that was the nuts. There was really nothing Jambre could do. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. Like, in his response to Anduin coming down, maybe a slightly more aggressive line of play. His play was so weird to me in going for just the Malfury and the Pestilent. It makes me think it was either he ran out of time or he's got some really weird tech in his deck that he was building up towards. But yeah, really unfortunate there. But that means that Greensheep is going to be left with just his Mage.
If it is the secret tempo mage, it's going to have a real nice shot against the Druid. But actually, having said that, that's against my usual ideas of what a Jade Druid is. This is a slightly weird build with the living mana in there as well.
Yeah, and that last game could have been very different if the Dragonfire Potion wasn't there. Like, that's another card that was in the hand of Greensheep, because, I mean, you had a lot of power on the board then with the living mana, and he had the follow-up of just extra damage. But, you know, you live and you learn, and you don't... You can't look back at these games sometimes. You can't get angry about it, Darroch. Stop getting angry. Calm down. Don't punch me. Well, this is the Tempo Mage, or at least the Tempo Secret Mage, as it were. Jambre still with the double Mind Control tech in his deck as well. We saw that last week as well, I believe.
Yeah, it's an interesting tech. Unlikely to be too good in this matchup. I don't think it's running Ghastly Conjurers. It's not too popular, so the chances of a mirror image coming down is small. But having said that, this is a pretty underwhelming starting hand for Greensheep, so it will give Jambre the time to get things going. But at the same time, until turns 3 or 4, he's taking things pretty slow himself.
And I like the fact he did play a Mind Control tech there, just to contest the board. I think the average player wouldn't have, and they would try to be greedy and say, oh, I'll save it for later. But no, just like that pie that you got, it's warm, you want to play it right then, you want to eat it straight away.
What pie?
Like a, I don't know, like a steak pie.
Oh, I was thinking like a pecan pie.
Ooh, you're a sweet tooth, are you?
I have a little sweet tooth. That made me want to be sick.
Good. That's twice in this broadcast that both of us are vomiting everywhere.
So a fantastic pickup there, however, for Greensheep. You just really needed a secret to get this going, obviously with the Medivh's Valet, but leading into the Cabal Crystal Runner as well. If another secret is picked up off the top, we could see secret into 2-mana Crystal Runner, which would be truly ridiculous, and that's the kind of board that Jambre is going to be struggling to come back from. But having said that, he's starting to get some use out of the mana he's gained so far. We could just see Jade Behemoth on this turn if he's not too afraid of Fireball. But if he is, we could see more mana ramp with the Maya Keeper and the Wrath. A lot of good options here to start to wrestle this back.
In general, in life, I am pretty scared of Fireballs. But clearly, Jambre is fearless and doesn't fear them at all. But the Fireball is now going to be available. And there's not really a fantastic option otherwise. Crystal Runner for 4 mana sometimes is playable, but you like to get it down for probably 2 before you're playing it. But we're going to see Greensheep control the board once again, and Jambre is going to be fighting back this aggro. At least he does have another Jade Behemoth, and he's got more options like the Jade Spirit to follow up, Jade Blossom. These Jades can get very large very quickly. Yep,
they are starting to overtake the board, but as ever, in this particular game, the elephant in the room is not actually the big green elephant in Jambre's hand. It's Archmage Antonidas, which is just ticking down to the point where unless Jambre sticks a board within the next 2-3 turns and Greensheep picks up a spell, that is just going to run away with the game.
Is it a case of on 7, if Jambre hasn't played or hasn't put anything significant on the board, you could just play Archmage, just bear? Just take his clothes off and throw him on the board and say, hey, I don't even need a spell right now.
Naked Tony.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm late. I'm late.
Do your thing with the magic tone.
And then just hope you draw into spell. You've got a polymorph there that could follow up for the next turn as well. But
yep.
I mean, this board should be big enough to not allow that.
I think if there was nothing going on the board, you could feel fairly safe in throwing it down. Obviously, that is if it wasn't on 10 mana for your opponent. I guess the Ultimate Infestation couldn't get rid of it, but because you've seen a Wrath already, Wrath and Swipe is something you're not too afraid of. But you can't quite clear up this whole board, and the fact that you have to leave a 2-attack minion on the board means that Ultimate Infestation would be able to kill off the Antonidas. So I think I would prefer some other line of play. The Greater Arcane Missiles is lining up pretty well to clear off this board.
I mean, because all 3 of them could just hit face, and then that's 9 damage to face.
Oof.
And then you're thinking, all right, I've got another Fireball in the deck. What would you prefer? I think you'd prefer it just to clear everything, wouldn't you? Maybe hit 2 of the 3-3 and the 2-3, and then you can trade your 2-3 into the 2-2, and that maximizes damage.
I mean, what you need to be considering while making any play here as Greensheep is your opponent ramped up on 8 mana, so you're very, very likely to see an Ultimate Infestation, which is what makes me hesitant of this play, because you are leaving up a full 5 health minion, but it's such a nice aggressive option to bring your opponent down to a low health total. Oh, doesn't play the top deck one. I guess because you're ramping up on turn 8, it's correct to play the one that your opponent assumes you have already.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good idea that you've got it. And now Greensheep is going to fall behind on the board here, or at least it would look like it. The Polymorph will certainly help out, but he might be tempted to keep that Polymorph for good old Tony, who's just sat there waiting to gobble up one of those spells and convert it into a Fireball. So maybe Greensheep will go along the lines of double Kirin Mage, maybe a ping as well here. You don't like it, do you?
I don't like it. It's just, nothing here is a nice play. It's just all slightly off.
A bit like milk that's been in the fridge for about a month.
A little bit too long.
Yeah.
You could sniff it.
You could probably push
maybe
a cup
in a
of tea.
strong tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not your cereal.
God forbid you put that bad boy in your cereal.
Absolute no-go for your Cheerios. Other brands are available. There we are.
That was a sacrilegious ding of the banter bell.
The banter bell has returned. But Greensheep clearly scratching his head just as much as we are, and I actually was scratching my head as I said that, but I had an itchy head, not because I was confused.
So going with the play you were thinking of at the start, but with the Polymorph.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those situations where you have to take calculated risks, because I think he assumes he is in a bad position. His opponent, now that he's got a very large hand, Jamboree will most likely be able to clear off the board, or most of it at least, or just set up a big taunt wall to get in the way. And he does set up a very, very respectable taunt wall here while clearing off 2 of the minions. So Greensheep is probably thinking, if I am going to win this game, I'm probably going to have to top deck a cheap spell to go with the Antonidas off the top, because if I just leave up this 5-5, I'm falling way too far behind on board.
Yeah, this is going to be a very important draw, and nada. That's not going to happen. So Jamboree slowly becomes more comfortable here. I wouldn't be surprised if he even just uses an Ultimate Infestation to gain a little bit of armor this next turn. Doesn't really care about burning a card here. He just wants to get out of range of something crazy like Glyph into Pyroblast into something. Yeah. I
mean, with this Antonidas that's in hand, he's probably he could be assuming that this is some kind of a damage spell, be it Fireball, Firelance Portal would almost definitely have come out on this turn. Actually, I guess Fireball would probably have come out by this point anyway, so maybe he is just assuming it's the Antonidas. But you're right, he will be taking steps to make sure he can't be burst out, because as long as he doesn't allow himself to be killed off by spells, he's probably going to be taking this game. But for Greensheep, if he keeps falling far behind on board, as you said, does go for the Ultimate Infestation, he needs to get a Primordial Glyph off the top, basically into Frost Nova in combination with the Archmage Antonidas to freeze the board and hope that Jamboree has no way of killing it off, but now he's even got that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Greensheep concedes here if he doesn't get any sort of spell, but he does get a spell, so Primordial Glyph does give him a chance.
He gets pretty much the one way he could do it.
Yeah, you need to find something significant here, though, from the Discover. Mana Bind does allow you to get another Fireball this turn.
But that's just a losing play. I mean, it's a secret, so you can go for bluff value. You're right, it is basically the only option you can go for here, because you have to just pray you can maybe finish your opponent off on the following turn, but Frostbolt off the top doesn't quite do it. Your opponent can even just, well, they can't quite win here, but it's very, very close.
Just 20s available, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Swipe and Hero Power.
Yeah, now that the second swipe was burned and both Mark of the Lotuses have been played.
So Jamboree should be able to finish this off. This is the thing, like, even though Greensheep has 2 Fireballs, there's no other option I think he can get out of this. Jamboree is well out of range. And so it's just a case of damage control now for Jamboree. He's working out the best way. I mean, you can kind of do anything at this point.
Yep. Jade Druid performing surprisingly well in this duel between these two players who are once again bringing fairly aggressive lineups. I was definitely expecting for the Jade Druids to be the weak points in this lineup, or for one of the players to be bringing aggro Druid, but just showing here that the power of ramp into Ultimate Infestation is not only a mid-range or control killer, it just shuts down aggro as well.
Yogg-Saron is not drawn by Greensheep, so there's going to be no crazy comeback here. So instead, probably the honourable Sudoku. Who is it who said that? Someone said on stream it was an honourable Sudoku.
I think it might have been like a Maz back in the day. That's a pretty old meme.
Yeah, that's a pretty... Sorry.
That's all right.
I like old memes.
It's a classic.
Okay?
It's a classic.
Yeah. Am I allowed to bring it up? You've really shut down all my memes today. I'm not happy about it.
You got to dank it up, boy.
I do have to have Danka memes. Well, Speaking of dank, it's 2-2 in this series, and now both of these players will be fighting to go 1-1. It's crazy that we have 2 winners doing so. One of them is going to be 0-2 after this series, which is pretty nuts. To be honest, Mage left for Greensheep and Warrior left for Jamboree. We have seen both decks, so it's going to be Pirate Warrior versus Tempo Mage. How do you feel about this?
So, everything I had to say about this matchup stored up in Minogan was all basically to do with the 2-mana Fiery War Axe that really changed the way this matchup goes because it shuts down Mana Worm, Arcanologist and Medivh's Valet, all of which can come down on turn 1 or 2. But now that it's 3 mana and not even necessarily run in every iteration of the deck, it really gives the Mage a much higher chance of just running away in the early game. And after they lock it down in the mid to early stages of the game, it might just be a bit too difficult for the Warrior to push through enough damage to close out the game.
Especially if the Warrior falls behind early on as well, which he may well do, because Jamboree has not really drawn anything too significant. Of course, South Sea Captain on turn 3 can be good. You can coin it out, and then you've got Patches that comes out as a 2-2. Babbling Book is an interesting inclusion, though, for Greensheep. It's not something that we've seen a lot of in Tempo Mage.
I think it's...
Well, not lately.
Okay, fair enough.
I think a lot of people have kind of sacrificed it, but...
Yeah.
It definitely was something that left Tempo Mage, then came back in, then left again. It's one of those...
Right, sure.
I think it's like down to preference.
Yeah.
Of how lucky you feel. Is it a Babbling Book?
It can be. And if we take a moment to count a spell here, we can see there's 3 counter spells.
That was a Jimmy Carr laugh. Do you know who Jimmy Carr is?
I do know who Jimmy Carr is. My uncle...
Your uncle is Jimmy Carr?
No, my uncle walked past him on the street once and he snotted on the floor. Jimmy Carr, not my uncle.
Oh, okay.
He's a very nice man.
Just your uncle saw him and decided to snot on the floor. Jimmy Carr then goes home and tells the story.
You giggling idiot.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say your uncle was Jimmy Carr then.
No. I wish.
Do you?
He's having a baby tomorrow, my uncle.
Alright.
Yeah.
Congratulations to him.
Thanks.
Please extend my congratulations and from the rest of the Hearthstone community.
I shall do.
Is he having a baby?
Where's wife?
Okay, just clarification there. Meanwhile, during baby talk, Greensheep's still doing well to keep this board control. He does have Medivh's Valet and a ping if he wants to clear everything off, but I think he'll be more than happy to draw some cards and just get rid of this Corcoran Elite. Ooh. I thought he was going to use Medivh's Valet to clear it.
I mean, given that we're coming down on turn 5, there's kind of a fair few ways that you could kill it off fairly easily, be it through War Axe or Weapon. I think I like saving it here because there are so many things with 3 health that you want to kill off, even just in hand, like the Corsair, the Captain, maybe another Corcoran Elite, all of which you can't be killing off with the ping. Or even just, here we see, doing enough damage to the Bitter-Tide Hydra to once again wrestle back the board.
And Greensheep does have a secret up, you can just see it there under the overlay.
Yes, and from the fact that both his other secrets are completely unplayable, which has actually been a massive hindrance so far. If just one of them were something else like a Mirror Entity or, I don't know, maybe an Ice Block or a Spellbender, which is sometimes running these lists, his Cabal Crystal Runner would be significantly cheaper. He could start dumping out his hand a little bit more effectively, but Jamboree is just not giving him the opportunity to play those cards, not playing any spells.
Yeah, which means he won't be able to get the Cabal Crystal Runners out just yet, so he's still falling behind on this board, and it allows Jamboree to keep building up and putting the pressure on. Greensheep has answer after answer, but how long can he keep answering before the final blow is dealt? Is the real question.
I mean, it seems like he has run out of immediate answers. The only real viable play I'm seeing on the following turn being double Cabal Crystal Runner, unless another secret is picked up, which it isn't, which is a great development onto the board. 4-mana 5/5s are really not to be sniffed at, but it does allow Jamboree to push forward a huge amount of damage. This is...
I think that's lethal, isn't it?
With the South Sea Deckhand and the
Deckhand upgrade and Leroy Jenkins, I believe, is exactly 20.
I think you're right.
So I think Jamboree's just having a little count to double check as well. And if my maths is correct, well, it would be if there wasn't a counterspell. Then he would have won that game.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but counterspell was there, of course.
I mean, he didn't know that that was a counterspell.
No.
It wasn't played the one from the Babbling Book, so he knew that it would have been one that came from the deck. So it's unlikely to be an ice block, and that he can assume very likely to be a counterspell at this point. But he's doing a pretty good job of playing around. It's still setting up very likely a lethal on the following turn. No real way to play around this from Greensheep unless he can kill his opponent, which, given that he's used 2 fireballs already, seems very unlikely he will be able to close out the game. And there's no real counter against Leroy. What can you do to shut it down? I think this is just over.
I think this is over as well. Jambre should be able to take this one 3-2. If it wasn't for the counter spell, he already would have, but Greensheep drops the well played. And Jambre, after what we thought was losing the first game, but in fact he actually won the first game, now wins the series 3-2. He is going to be 1-1 in the Swiss, but unfortunately for Greensheep, last season's champion is at 0-2 after 2 rounds. Ouch.
It's really not looking good for Greensheep. Not completely out of the tournament yet, if I am right in assuming so, but going to have to be really fighting, winning every single week from here on in if he wants to progress. I think mostly I didn't really disagree with anything that Greensheep was doing along the way. Obviously, Jamboree was getting messed up by RNG at points along the way as well when Greensheep drew the pretty much perfect Priest game against his Jade Druid, but unfortunate for Greensheep there that his own fairly aggressive lineup didn't do as well against the slightly more aggressive lineup from Jamboree, which, I mean, if you're up against Greensheep, maybe just out-aggroing was the way to go.
And I think most players now in this meta have got set of what the best decks are.
Right.
And maybe I was expecting one of these players to take the initiative and say, right, I'm expecting this aggression from the other person, so I'm going to go super control heavy, have lots of removal, but it's the kind of double bluff of if they do that, is my opponent then going to sort something that just smashes through control and all these situations. So in the end, I won't say I'm disappointed. I think it was a fantastic series, but maybe I would like to see a little bit more experimentation from players. But I guess at this point in this meta, it's kind of locked down now, right? Like, people know what they like, and you're going to play the best decks, and that happened, and Jambre wins 3-2.